1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Hike. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I'm ready when you are, Pastor. That was a good one. I like that. Welcome, everybody, to Empowering Pastors and Leaders. Today, we are going to continue with our training on leadership pain. If you have not yet purchased Samuel Chan's book called Leadership Pain, I strongly encourage you to do so. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal book. We are literally hitting the highlights of it in this training, and this is week 4, I believe. We are not able to cover all the details of this book, so I challenge you to go buy it. Get it in your library. You can also get it on audible.com or Audible, and I think that you will thoroughly enjoy and actually be challenged by it. I've also found that this is not a study that you can just do once. You got to do constantly. You got to have it in the forefront of your mind. Why? Well, because the enemy desires to get you to a place where you are going to be offended in ministry. And as a leader, if he can get you offended, then what occurs is then you are now going to be discredited by him. Because when you are living a life of offense, you nullify the power of God. And when you live a life of offense, you now no longer are able to open up your heart to help other people, but you're always in protective mode to make sure that you are going to be an individual that nobody's going to be able to hurt again. If you cannot be hurt, then you are not a good leader. If you are in protection mode, you are not a good leader. And the reason you're not a good leader is simply because Jesus said the very essence of ministry is love. God is love. Anything done outside of love is what? A clanging cymbal. It means nothing. So there's such an importance to make sure that we remain unoffended. Well, when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about pain. That's what this book is all about. That pain is part of process, and pain is part of who you are now that you are a leader. We've covered different ones: criticism, betrayal, heartaches at home. Last week we were covering stress. And today I want to cover one that's called growing pains. Now, growing pains are part of life. In fact, we have, I think, 14 new babies coming in here at his tabernacle in the next few months. That's a lot of babies. I looked at our dear worship leader this morning as she was in the hallway, and I went, "Oh, you're very pregnant. Her stomach is getting big, and you can see the baby. You can see the stomach, it's protruding." Now, I used to have a really good stomach, and it was protruding, but there was no baby in there. But Mackenzie, you can see now that she has a baby inside her womb. Not that she didn't have a baby in the womb, but you can see the baby in the womb because the baby's saying, "I want out soon." So we're seeing growth. Growth always demands pain. Change is hard because people overestimate the value of what they have and underestimate the value of what they will gain by giving that up. Have you ever seen the old portrayal of, it's usually a child, there's a narrow-necked candy jar, and there's a lot of candy in the bottom, and the child reaches their hand in and grabs a pile of candy, a full fist load of candy, and tries to get their hand out, and they can't. Well, why can't they? Because their hand is so full. They get none of it. And so they have to let go to get out what they want. And in our lives, because change is not going to stop. Remember, there are two things that never cease. That is time and change. That many people will never progress because they like where they're at, but aren't willing to pay the price of pain to get where they need to go. And if you're going to go somewhere you've never gone before, For Mackenzie to have a baby, it means that her stomach is going to get large. She's probably going to, now you can speak against this or use a lot of cocoa butter, but possibly get stretch marks. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Going to get stretch marks. Well, what happens? And that is because your skin is saying, wow, you're growing faster than I can grow. You're growing further than I want to be protruded. I don't want to be stretched that much. That's called stretch marks. But you can't have a baby, mostly, not everybody, not all women, but majority of women cannot have a baby without getting stretch marks. If you've ever seen a weightlifter, and my son Cody being a weightlifter, you will look on his shoulders and you will see stretch marks. There we got it. On his shoulders. Well, why is that? Well, because he's lifting and his skin is not growing as fast as his muscular structure. Well, I mean, the fact is that he wants it to grow. So he's willing to pay the pain even of sight. I don't think he likes that there are stretch marks. The fact is it would look better if the skin grew. But with this, we must know that if you're going to have time and change never ceasing, you either have the responsibility of doing nothing or the responsibility of moving forward. And if you're going to be a leader that's going to move forward, and as a visionary, you don't have a choice. If you're a visionary and you're not moving forward, then you are not a visionary. But if you are a visionary and not moving forward, you have to become depressed. A visionary with no vision becomes depressed. Well, why is that? Well, because a visionary always has to see in the future. But a visionary that does not embrace time and change will be one that will always remain in safety, and therefore they have to remain in placement. Visionaries can't be remaining in placement without becoming depressed. But you must come to a conclusion in your head that where I'm going is greater than where I'm at, than where I am. Which demands at that moment in time that now you have to embrace as leaders pain. You have to say, I'm willing to experience pain so that I can get where I want to go. If you are unwilling to do that, then you'll become depressed as a visionary leader. Peter Wagner learned and shared a few points when it came to be a change maker. First, we must keep loving people. We can't allow ourselves to lead from bitterness. Sometimes the greatest pain produces our greatest lessons. Now, even with Rhonda moving on to heaven, it's brought great pain. But I have learned great lessons. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is the reality or stronger reality of the human spirit. I don't think I would have ever had that revelation of the reality of the human spirit as much as I have without going through the pain of losing her spirit on this planet. Other lessons I've learned, and that is the tenacity that is necessary as what the pain I've gone through in the last 3 years. I know many pastors who have not made it through one of them. Not just her being diagnosed with 2 weeks to live, not just going through chemotherapy, not just going through radiation, not just going through operations, not just going through the pain, not just watching her go through the suffering, the sleepless nights, more operations, etc., the terminal diagnoses, and then seeing her get sicker and sicker and sicker, and at the same time turning around and watching the sadness of being attacked from the exterior from a man who said he was my friend at one period of time, and then working desperately to literally try to destroy the entirety of my entire life. And then watching COVID come on the scene. Them trying to say the church has to be shut down or you're going to go to jail or get fined $15,000 per service. Having to make decisions of what level of pain you're willing to experience. And then she dies, And then I'm in a whole nother aspect of leadership pain because I still have to lead while I'm in pain. So in all of this, we've got to come to a conclusion in our own hearts that we must be tenacious. That growing pains mean pain. That growing pains literally mean that you are going to be stretched to a location in a position that is not just uncomfortable, but now is causing literal, physical, and emotional pain. If you are unwilling to do that, then you are automatically stymied and not going to move forward. Therefore, you're not going to be a great leader. You can be a leader and still not be a great leader. Jim Collins wrote the book, Good to Great. Frank Damasio did a twist to it, and he had permission from Jim Collins and made it a spiritual thing about churches. You have good churches and you have great churches. There's a difference. You have good pastors, you have great pastors. Good pastors are ones that people forget when they die. Great pastors leave a legacy that goes well beyond their years, and it is impacted and been imparted to many. But no great leader is ever created without going through the reality of pain, because change is normal in your life. There is not normalcy in your life. Change is consistent and constant, which means pain is consistent and constant. And the level of pain that you felt in the beginning, as you gain pain resistance, as your skin becomes thicker, what used to debilitate you now doesn't even affect you. So the next trial is even easier than the last trial, because now you've learned how to maturate and absorb the pain to keep with the change. Peter Wagner said, second, people are going to do what they're going to do. There's nothing you can do but keep going, doing the right thing and trusting God. Some of the greatest pains that you feel because of time and change is that from the people that you're leading. People are okay with you leading them into change as long as they see their personal benefit from it. When a person doesn't see their personal benefit from the change, they're going to resist the change, equating pain. Well, it's most of the time not physical pain. They're not running up to you and punching you in the face and saying, see, you're trying to make me change, pow. But what they do is they cause you emotional pain. They start talking behind your back. They start trying to correlate a group of people that can be formed against you. They start maybe getting in your face, and they were kind to you, now they're mean to you. Whenever change comes, as a leader, it must be absorbed. But people that you're leading might not want to absorb, and therefore, that's where your pain is coming from. So time and change are those two, that couple, that are constant in your life. And as leaders, we must make decisions that no matter where I am right now, I know that time and change. I was on my way to church Sunday, and I said, wow, the sun is shining. Time is still moving. Look at the leaves are getting ready to bud. The seasons are still moving. Listen, time isn't going to stop for you. Change isn't going to cease for you. The problem is not time and change. The problem is, as a leader, are you willing to grow with it or be destroyed by it? That is a personal decision that nobody can make for you. And sadly enough, and truthfully, sadly enough, there are many leaders that God had created to be great that never became more than an individual. I can think of one right off the top of my head where he was a phenomenal preacher. And in one of the cities that he was in, he was making a massive impact. And then they had a situation where time happened, change happened, and adversity happened, and they moved back to their town. And the wife said, "We will never go through that again." So for the last 45 years, they have never had more than 50 people. No matter what God designed him to be, time and change debilitated him to be something that no one will remember. You want to be remembered. Okay? You want to be remembered. One of the things when you do a funeral, Pastor Dan's done many just like I have. Why do you do a funeral? You're trying to remember the person. That's why you did a funeral. Why would you do a funeral if you didn't want to remember them? Here's the other thought. Most of the families that I've dealt with over the years, one of their greater fears is the fact that you will forget them. And truthfully, most are forgotten. The difference between somebody that is forgotten and someone that is not forgotten is one that either embraced time and change or one that repelled it. If you embrace time and change, then you are going to be a person that will be indelible no matter how many years have passed. Why? Well, because you made a decision to be a great leader, which means you served people, which means you changed lives, which means generation after generation is obligated to you because of how you served. How do we know that biblically? What was his name? I just had it in the top of my head. Onesimus. There it is. If you remember, Paul had Onesimus, who was a runaway slave. He got saved under his ministry. I'm trying to remember which book that's in. Is that Philemon? Is it Philemon? And he was sending him back to the slave owner. And he said, "Whatever Onesimus owes you, just put it to my account. Oh, and by the way, you owe me your life." Whether you like it or not, to be a great leader, people will owe you their life. Because without you becoming the great leader that you were called to be, which means you were willing to embrace time and change, knowing that pain is going to be part of the process, generations literally have been transformed, revolutionized, because you decided to be a leader that was willing to withstand the pain of change. Others dissipate over seconds, hours. Their memory disintegrates after a year. There is no legacy. There is just a gravestone that said, "Oh, by the way, don't forget who died here." That's the difference between being a great leader and a good leader. That's the pain of your time, the pain of rejection, the pain of being lied about. Oh, we can go through the list of all the pains. We just went through them. The pain of stress, the pain of misunderstanding, the pain of sacrificing what you want so that others can grow. That's a big one for most leaders. They're okay with being a great leader as long as it doesn't dent their time. If you're going to be a great leader, you don't own your time. Leaders have to be the midwife of the pain in the birth of new things. They have to hold the hand and help the body deal with pain productively. Bill Eastman. Starts with an E. Okay. Addressing problems causes pain. Ooh, I'm teaching a class right now on conflict management. If you're going to be a leader, conflict is your major part of your life and ministry. Somebody once said to me, I would love ministry if it wasn't for the people. Exactly. Why are you in ministry? But if you have people, you have problems. Proverbs says it the best. If you want an ox who produces much work, you're going to have some poo in the stall. Well, as leaders, this is part of it. And learning how to address the problems is what you have to do to help somebody grow. But if you address the problems, you know you're placing yourself in a position of pain. There are leaders that don't want pain so bad, they're unwilling to address situations and problems in their ministry or in their job, in their company, and therefore they think it's small, but actually it's not small. It ends up becoming a great cavern and causes greater pain later. Leadership problems that cause pain when addressed. Poor performance by key leaders. Whether you like it or not, you don't perform. Christianity and the church world is the only place an individual cannot perform and still expect to be treated with respect. It's insanity. If you've been in the same church for 10 years and you still have under 50 people, you either need to quit or be beat. You need some pain. Why? Because if you have only that many people after that many years, well, Pastor, our town is small. Really? A cult can get more than you. When a cult can get more than a church, the kingdom of God has nothing to do with the message. Has to do with the messenger. The leader is unwilling to move. There's something they're unwilling to sacrifice. We are the greatest deceivers of ourselves as leaders. Well, I'm doing the best I can. Really? You are? That's scary if the best is producing that. Well, we don't want to address ourselves like that because that brings pain to our own psyche. We then have to be honest with ourselves. Why is there no growth? Why are we not seeing production? Why are we not seeing results? We love to blame everybody else. Everyone loves to blame somebody else. But as a leader, what do you say? What do we got to change to bring greater production? Toxic attitudes within leaders of the organization. Truthfully, these are things that cannot wait to be addressed. Dissension through gossip or people that stir trouble. I remember I let a pastor go once because his wife wouldn't shut up. She was a gossip. In fact, I helped her gossip. I gave juicy information on purpose to see how far it would go. I had a great time doing it. Then I fired her, which means I fired him. You got to know that these things, that if you're unwilling to address them as leaders, that ultimately what's occurring is you think you're just passing it off. You're not. You're literally piling upon pile upon pile of greater pain for yourself later. Oh, now let's address husbands. Husbands, you got wives that are out of order. Oh, they were excited until I said that, weren't they? Husbands, you got wives out of order. Maybe your wife is a gossip. Maybe your wife is one that's nasty and mean. Maybe your wife is one that's not going to help you through your leadership pain. Come on now, you think avoiding it is actually going to fix it? You got to address it. Bring the order to your own house. If you can't bring order to your own house, you can't bring order to God's house. Oh, by the way, that is the Bible. Structure or outdated systems within the organization. And I think that we do that constantly at His Tabernacle. What's a way that we can change this? What do we got to do to change this? I mean, Pastor Cody is the change beast. Yes, he is. Why? Well, because he's been trained to embrace change since he's been a child. It's part of his nature. Part of Pastor Chad's nature. Part of Corinne's nature. Why? Well, we bred change into them. We made it so that it was normal for them and almost boring if there was no change that was occurring. Even this morning, I addressed the staff and I said, we're going to do something different for the next 6 months. Why are we doing that? To see if I can bring more change. I want more results. I want more souls saved. I want more butts in seats. About 4 months ago, I hired a company to do some local advertising with, it was a local TV station, to do advertising on their website. $700 a month. After 4 months, there was no butt in a seat that came from that advertising. So I had to look and call the guy up who I like. He's a nice guy. Watch now. When you eliminate advertising from an advertiser, you've just taken away money out of their family's mouth. And I said, I appreciate all you did, but I saw no results, so I don't want to be offensive, but we're canceling. Oh, but is there a way that we can? No, sir. No, sir. Well, you know, and I had one guy actually say to me, well, you know, if you cancel this, I mean, it works on my wages. I'm not going to be able to take care of my family. And I said, I'm sorry. No production. No result. Change. Leaders who are in a paralyzed production. Every department's got to look at themselves. Where am I? Why am I? Why am I here? What am I seeing as a result? I had one leader, it was one of the worship leaders, I gave him 4 teams when he came. By the time he left, he had whittled it down to 1. And then when he left, he caused me such problems, he contaminated 3 of the leaders that were on the 1 team. By the time he left after 2.5 years, I went from 4 teams that had great diversity and style, 4 different leaders, different bands, to now I didn't even have one full one. And half of them were mad at me because I fired him. He walked in his office. He strolled in one day after skipping a Sunday service without telling anybody. He was double dipping, getting paid from a church he was preaching at. We only found out because he did a Facebook Live. He walked in the office. The individual that was responsible said, do you want me to do it now? And I said, yep. Walked into his office and said, you can pack all your stuff now, you're fired. That guy whose responsibility it was that he fired, that fired him, came in my office like an hour later and quit. He said, I can't do that again. It's too emotional. It's part of leadership. I've fired a lot of people. At times I enjoy it. The question is whether or not the leader is willing to address the problems knowing it will cause pain. No one sits back and says, wow, I'm so excited to cause myself stress. But yet, if you're not willing to do that as a leader, you've caused yourself more stress. Samuel Chan says it this way. The moment you've thought about firing somebody, you've got to. Because now you have to try to figure out reasons why not to. Did you follow me? Here we go. The moment you have considered firing somebody, you now have to execute it. Because if you do not execute it, now you've got to create reasons why you shouldn't, which you know are going to be lies. So you've actually generated more stress for yourself by lying to yourself to try to keep them so you don't have stress by firing them. Leading a growing, changing, dynamic organization requires tremendous courage, wisdom, and tenacity. Samuel Chand. Are you willing to give up something valuable to you to see progression of the vision? This is a demand on leadership. Are you willing to give up friends and family? Are you willing to give up buildings and your organizational structure? This is how we do things. We've always done it this way. There are two fundamental errors organizations make as they confront issues: ignoring the pain and misdiagnosing the pain. Samuel Chand. Your time and how you do things in leadership. Are you willing to change? You got to ask yourself that. Are you willing to change? Myself, it becomes normal to me. I don't have a problem with change. Someone says, can we try this? I said, sure. If it don't work, we just kill it. Are you afraid that we might do something wrong? Well, no. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just don't do it again. But you don't know you could walk until you start to walk and then you fall. I got a grandson right now who's learning how to walk. Graham was laying on his back, couldn't even roll over. And then within a few weeks, he's rolling over. And then after a period of time, he's starting to crawl. Then he's standing up with help on the couch and would fall over. Thoosh. Pick him back up. Thoosh. Then they start walking around on the furniture. Thoosh. But you cannot walk unless you're willing to fall. You cannot succeed unless you're willing to fail. A person that is unwilling to experience pain will never walk. You've got to be willing to experience pain to be able to run the race. Most leaders are willing for others to change, but not themselves. Are you willing to go and learn? I'm trying to speed up here a little bit because I can talk my way through an hour of this, and we're trying to keep it short. Here it is. Settling is not fun. It's a malignant habit. Say that again. Settling is no fun. It is a malignant habit. What is malignant? What is malignant? Look it up. Look it up. Malo. Look it up. Malignant.
Very virulent or infectious. Tending to invade. Consuming.
Well, just use the word cancer. Cancer are cells that now eat themselves and everything around it. It's your body that's killing your body. A person that's unwilling to learn and a person that's willing to settle is malignant in habits. Microphone. We got a microphone over there.
Have you ever come to a point where you know you have to change in an area, but you said to yourself, like, well, as of right now, I'm unwilling to change? Like, what did you do to make yourself willing to change?
I personally have never been there. Because the moment I recognize I have to change, I have convinced myself that the change is going to be greater in result than remaining where I'm at. I think the only time that I have resisted that was in a time that I did not have a choice, which is when Rhonda died. I didn't have a choice that she died. I didn't get to say, yeah, you can die. I mean, I did tell her she could go, but it wasn't like, yay, she's dead. I didn't have a choice. And then you constantly hear people say, well, God's got greater. Well, I can't see the greater yet. I'm not experiencing the greater yet. But I've known change so well that the sun still came up on Sunday. The buds were still coming on the trees. The birds were still singing. She's in a, listen, she got the great deal. If we actually believe that to die is gain, she got the deal. She got the gain. Well, I'm still in that process of, okay, I know all things work together for good to those that are in Christ Jesus. I know that. I've proven that. I've lived that. But this change is uncomfortable for me, but I have no choice of this change. So I'll either roll up in a ball, come on now, get into mediocrity, or I'll say, here we go, baby. God's got greater. I can't comprehend that, but God's got greater. Steve? While you're moving over to that, raise your hand again. I'll keep reading this. It's a malignant habit, a slippery slope that takes you to mediocrity. The art of leadership is understanding what you can't compromise on. And that is from Seth Godin in the book called Tribes.
How do you work with a person that you know they're a leader, but because of their upbringing, they were not taught to make change. They just went along, their parents taught them to either go along with the flow or they did things for them. So they did not have the stamina, they did not have the understanding, they didn't have, I know that when you become a preacher, you become a Christ. However, sometimes the mentalities
They came out of Egypt, but they couldn't get Egypt out of them. So what did God do? He let them die in the desert. I'll personally, honestly, will only work with a leader for a period of time, and if I see no progression, then I abandon them. Very short period of time. And you work with them with things that you know are going to make them uncomfortable. So if I give them tasks that I know will make them uncomfortable, and yet I don't see them accomplish it, I'll try 2 or 3 times and then I'll abandon them. I'll love them, but I am not going to spend my time with them. Why? Because you're supposed to spend 80% of your time with those that are committed and those that are coming to commitment. Not the crazy, the complaining, crazy, what are they? Critical, complainers, crazies. There's one more. No, there's one more. Wasn't there? Okay, there we go. So, leaders do not always move forward, except in the call of the pain. They always go back. They use excuses. This is why Excuses can never, ever, ever be part of your life. It must be a red flag in your vocabulary. The moment you start using an excuse, you know that you're not willing to embrace the pain of change. It is your personal flag that says, I do not want to mature. I actually will allow people to tell me why they're not successful. And I'll count how many excuses they use. Then I will immediately start to override their excuses. I learned this selling cars. Sold cars. Quite successful selling cars. When I sold a car, I waited for someone to say, well, I can't make this decision on my own. I've got to make it with my wife. And I would say, awesome. Let's go take it to your wife. Oh, well, she's at work. What time does break get over? When does she get out? I'll meet you over at your house. Oh, well, excuse after excuse after excuse ultimately means I don't really want it. Oh, okay, she gets out at 4:30. I live at... He wants change. He wants to change his car. Well, you know, I'm not sure how much the insurance will be. Well, let's make a call. What's your insurance company? I'll dial it for you. Oh, well, I don't want to bother them. Don't want change. Excuses are the railroad that people use to never get to their destination. I love hearing excuses because it helps me determine how much investment I will give to an individual. Hear me now. You and I are investors. Leaders are investors. Leaders are not doing the work themselves. We're investing into people. We might have to do the work until the investment is at its full capacity so that they're actually able to produce the same result that you were able to produce. Even though they might do it a different way, you have now imparted to them the process and the capability of accomplishing what the end goal is. But the moment somebody starts using excuses, you have to buy the tape. I'm just kidding. Now it's free online. You can rewatch this on Empowering Pastors Facebook page, as well as I believe it will be on the YouTube page as well. I love listening to excuses because then I know how much time I want to invest in an individual. When I stop investing in you as an individual, you know what I've done is I've stepped back because you've used too many excuses. And if you've used too many excuses, I know ultimately that you will never be successful. Which means I won't be successful. Which means you're already being replaced. You just don't know it yet. No excuses. A leader that uses excuses, well, my town, the size of my town, really? Look at the size of our town, our whole county. I have churches that are up in the city that look at me and go, well, you know, it's so hard to reach people. You have 1 million people. And you have a church of 50. Our county is 88,000 people. A whole county. Don't give me an excuse. A cult is doing better than you. The devil is doing better than you. Stop your excuses. I said, stop your excuses. Well, I think that's the way to end it right there. Your pain level never rises to new places without getting past the last threshold. So the question has nothing to do with what you can accomplish. It's what you're willing to accomplish, which means how much pain are you willing to experience? And what excuses are you using to not make the pain process happen in your life. Ooh, that's good stuff. And watch that. It's free. Free leadership training on Tuesdays. You don't have to pay Zig Ziglar. He's dead, but you don't have to pay him. This is where even it amazes me. One man said to me, he said, well, you know, Pastor, I appreciate all you've done for me, but I think I've moved past where you are. Well, then you can become my sensei. Fact is that when you've stopped learning, you've stopped growing. When you've stopped growing, you've stopped stretching. When you've stopped stretching, you've stopped pain. When you've stopped pain, you are now in a malignant habit of complacency and mediocrity. Don't blame anybody else. In our church, every leader in this church has been given everything they need to succeed. And I've said this I think I've said this to all of you. You can grow it as big as you want. So if you can grow it as big as you want, how big are you growing it? And what excuses are you using to not grow it? It comes right down to pain. Because the pain is applied to you. Are you willing to grow, stretch, and experience? If not, well, you'll never cross the threshold. I never wanted to be a campus pastor. I never wanted to have campuses. No. I never anticipated saying, why, I can't wait to oversee pastors. That wasn't something I sat down and said, yay! Why? Because now I deal with all their problems too. They call me with their issues. Just like when I call Bishop about my issues. I think that when I call him, I make sure that I kind of do a mixture. I send praise, and maybe the next time I hit him with a hard one. Because I don't want him to always think every time I call I got a problem. But the fact is that most of the time I call him is because I have a problem. And I just want his wisdom. But that means I invoke him to get involved with my pain. He's got to be willing to experience my pain, even though it's not his problem. What are you willing to experience? Throw out your excuses, because they're all bogus. What are you willing to experience? And how much pain are you willing to have in your life? We'll pick up, I believe next week we won't be here, but the week after we will be. So thank you very much for watching. I pray that you were blessed online. I want to remind you, if you would like to go to empoweringpastors.com, there are other resources that are on there. Books are on there, as well as what's available is the different assessments are available. You have emotional intelligence, and I believe that every pastor should be taking an emotional intelligence. Every leader should be taking an emotional intelligence assessment to be able to judge where you need to bring change in your personal life. We can also do other assessments that are available on the site as well. If you would like us to speak and do training with your leaders at your church, we would be more than willing to do that. We do that in process too. So if you would just like to send a message, that's available. Have a great day and enjoy yourself.